All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. We are Geekspeak, and this month, this week, we are talking about sustainable and eco-friendly practices for website and hosting. I am Rena Little from Full Serve Web Marketing, and my co-host is
Phelan from Seymour Digital Media.
Yes, and we're really excited to talk about this
Hmm.
piece because so much of our online world is actually not that environmentally friendly. So it's pretty fun to figure out ways in which you can try and get your carbon footprint and your water down based on your usage. And
Yeah,
that's one of the areas that I'm interested in working on for myself and my clients. So,
exactly.
we have a few things to talk about. One of the things that we obviously want to hit starting right out of the gate is usage of all kinds online is going to be problematic. So there is, we went through a whole phase where we became paperless and that was considered environmentally friendly. But now that we're storing all those pieces of paper online on a drive or a Dropbox somewhere, that is actually using energy to store. So what we want to do is sort of have a minimalist approach to all of this. I think that's really a great idea, just because it's not in your space, it is somewhere and it uses energy to be there and resources.
Yeah.
So get offline. That's a really great thing. And that's also good for your mental health. As we all know, there's lots of conversations going on about, all of that and the algorithm that tries to keep you online and keep you in there in specific apps. And what we want to do is to try and get out of into real life and have other kinds of conversations with people. So with that in mind, what can we do with the stuff? Because we obviously need to be online. Like I need to be online, Phelan needs to be
Yeah.
online. We do that for work. So we need to figure out how we can shift our usage and organize our assets for less. So we've got a few different things to talk about here. And um, so we had talked a little bit about sustainable design and development practices. So let's talk about WordPress and websites in general. The
Yeah.
thing that I thought that I was most curious about was that a lean site actually is better for the environment, and it sort of makes sense because the less functionality you have, the less things that are moving all the time, all of that sort of stuff, the less power it needs, the less gigabytes it uses to hold all of the software in place. So what does that mean? That means that you can do a couple of things. You can have an audit, a basic SEO audit will do it because SEO audits provide technical SEO audit, and that is exactly what identifies the heavy weight on your website, the extra code, the giant files, all of that sort of stuff is going to be shown up. So you can even take your site and run it through one of those free audits online to get those pieces, and you can go ahead. But Phelan, tell me, how do you guys organize for optimizing your images? Do you optimize them beforehand, or do you use a plugin to squish them up after you've uploaded them, or what do you do in your
I
development?
mean, if I get access to the files ahead of it, so usually I'm auditing an existing website. It's very rare that I'm doing it
Yeah.
from scratch. But if I can get ahead of it, you can use an app like Short Pixel. That's a really
Oh,
good,
yeah.
very generous free tier that I've never really seen a big use case to even get the paid version, but very
Mm-hmm.
generous in its free tier. You can also look at a situation like a Cloudflare to help you with, again, because they would have
Yeah.
a CDN and they have a very generous free tier, and so again the less compute that it takes for you to make a request against a website means that you're using less
Mm-hmm.
power, and so the shorten the distance, the smaller, more compressed files you have around the internet, it's one time to get it out there, but then once it's there,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot less time for you to actually get.
Yeah.
And so those are ways that you can look at it. It also, kind of building on what you said, it makes a lot of sense for us doing making the site as small as possible, as lean as possible, as with as little bloat means that computers have to process less information in order for them
That's
to
right.
kind of store it and to also deliver it to other people. So it just makes
Yeah.
sense that you want to have it as lean as humanly possible.
So there's one thing that you mentioned in all of that, all of that. I don't know what that is, what I'm going to name it, but and that is, let's talk about caching because I think that's something that people hear about. They hear about please empty your cache, and they do it, but I don't know if they actually realize what they're doing. So just explain that for the, for people who don't have an understanding. Generally speaking, the first time you go to view a website, you're going directly to the server where that website is. And then your computer is going to store a cached version of that site locally. That's correct, right? In essence,
Cache,
it's not
in
exactly, but
essence, it's like
yeah.
it caches certain parts that your browser may
Okay,
deem
certain
to be
parts.
heavy. So what's happening
Okay.
is that your browser itself has about 10 megabytes of cache storage. So
Mm-hmm.
it, up to, I think now that, no, no, I'm actually thinking about it. I think it's up to a gig now that it's allowed to keep on your as part of your
Okay.
browser. So all the websites you go to, what they do is they kind of, if you frequently visit the same website, what they do is it kind of like, oh, let's save this header image. Let's save like,
Yeah,
like little bits like that that are not huge to you to the browser itself, but are huge to it's loading it again faster. And so
that's
it kind of
right.
makes little decisions on like, oh, that little bit of code was really expensive to run. Let's keep a little version of that on the
Yeah,
browser.
so there are kind of two things to remember about that. So one is that when you have a cached version, you're going to access that site faster the second time than the first time.
Yep.
That also means that your loading time, what it feels like for you, might not be accurate as to how long it actually takes to load on the first time.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to note because I always get that from clients. I'll tell them, oh, your site takes quite a while to load. It takes longer than what we want especially when we're running ads, because if you don't get people to that site to view that site right away, then you can lose them quite quickly, and
Yep.
that's a waste of a click, because you're paying for clicks usually. Um, so so your experience as a business owner or a website owner might not be exactly the same as what a new person's experience is. So you want to actually um, make your site light so that it actually responds faster, it caches better, it creates a better user experience, but it also creates a better experience for the environment because you don't have, as the word that you used, which was absolutely perfect, is bloated. You don't have a bloated site with
Yeah.
all the bells and whistles, and that usually comes when you purchase. It used to be really prevalent when you purchased WordPress themes before you could do sort of the drag and drop or the when you were building a custom theme. If you bought a theme that had every bell and whistle on it, so it had like the portfolio option, and it had like maybe a store option, or it had sliders, or it had all the options, and you would
Yeah.
only choose to use what you needed, but all of that software, all of that code is still up on your site, and that's what bloats your site. So we really want to make sure that we remove all of that extra stuff that we're not using, and lighten up your site. That's number one. It'll use less, it'll be more efficient, and and more sustainable.
Yeah,
So that is
I was
one
just gonna
piece.
say
Yeah,
off of that is as well.
sure.
If you're using the Divi theme, it was notorious for
Okay.
add because it was drag and drop, so it would add
Yeah,
little divs, and so there'd be six times the HTML code that you just don't
yeah,
need, and so it was
yeah,
easily the worst offender for that one. Of if you
yes,
actually went and saw it, so your browser has to process like all these extra divs because it was like dragged and dropped to a certain area, and that's how they got around it. I don't know what it is currently because I haven't touched a Divi
oh, it's
theme.
terrible. It's still terrible. I'm working on one at the moment, and it loads very slowly. Thankfully, they're not running ads or doing any of that sort of stuff, but
Mm,
it certainly it's a beast, especially when you start to add up all of your blog posts, which is another thing I wanted to get into. So we also want to think about the content that we're putting up there. I've seen a couple of things that are super interesting. One is the client who constantly blogs every week for 10 years and then never goes back and reorganizes old blog pieces or updates them or gets rid of them or anything like that. It's really good to review, even for an SEO strategy. It's a really good idea to review your blogs and reorganize them. Take a look at which ones are ranking really well for your strategy and which ones are not, and then do some house cleaning, blog cleaning, or whatever you want to call it. That's number one. The other client that I've seen recently was they did their portfolio photo choices on the website. So they didn't pre-organize the chosen photos.
Mm-hmm.
They uploaded every single photo and then they marked, yes, we want that one, no, we don't want that one. And it's still, all of those photos still sit
On
on
the
the
server.
website.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the server. So that is another bloat method. So that's not how portfolios are meant to work, and it's better to use this is why best practices are around, and it's really good to look up the best practices. So if you're going to implement yourself as a DIY website person, you're going to implement something like a store you want, or a portfolio. Sorry, I don't know why story hit in my mind, but if you want to add a portfolio, then Google what is the best practices for organizing your portfolio online, so that you get all this information and you do the steps in the right order. It might seem like a really great idea, and in this company's process, it worked very well. The assistant uploaded everything. The designer went through and unchecked the ones that she didn't want shown, and then they published it, which works very well for a SOP, internal SOP, but doesn't work for websites in particular.
Yeah, I
Um,
was going to circle back a little bit to the blog post thing that you mentioned because I have
mhm.
a client that has blogged for 10 years and they asked me about what the blog post should I write a new one or should I revisit an old one? And it's always better to revisit an old one or merge things down because
Yes,
it makes it easy for Google because they already know what that blog post is
yes,
about. So if they see a little
yes.
ticker, because if you have the way WordPress works is that there's actually like a little tag that's hidden in the head
Yeah.
code that says, "Oh, this has been updated since it was first written." And so Google goes, "Oh, this has been updated. Cool." And so it'll scan and it will I don't know this for a fact, but I've heard that they will prioritize old ones because again, like caching,
Oh,
right? It already
okay.
has an idea of what was already
Yeah,
there, so it's
that
easier
makes
for them
sense.
to kind of go against and run a diff, right? Like you see what's there
Hmm.
and what's new, and then you go, "Oh, okay, this actually has been updated. Cool." And then it will re-engage that. And so that's really good. And especially if you visit a really good example of this is the website WordStream that's been around for
Yeah.
almost 20 years, and they keep the actual tag markers of when they first published it, and then they also have a tag that says when it was last updated, so you know that it's new content, and it tells Google, hey, this has been updated. So
Yeah.
again, all
Yeah.
these ideas on ways that you just conserve energy of scanning websites, of loading websites. That's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So lean websites, lean content, like lean code, lean photos, lean blog posts, lean
Yeah.
portfolios, all that stuff. Let's get into my favorite part, which is the hosting, because that's one thing that I offer my clients is carbon neutral hosting. And I started off doing that through reselling Green Geeks actually a while back. And then I didn't like Green Geeks so much because, well, during the pandemic, they were really hit with brute force attacks. And
Oh
we
yeah.
had 2 weeks, 2 weeks of hell where we had to change IP addresses almost every day, sometimes twice a day, while they were trying to figure out how to close up the the vulnerability point where the malware was entering. And so
Mm.
it was really stressful for me. I remember Josh and I were just going out of our mind.
Yeah.
So, so basically, and then, of course, the privacy situation changed. Um, where the US was doing some shady things with the data, and
Mm.
we wanted to have control for our clients over the data privacy. So we moved our servers up to Canada. And so it took me a hot minute to figure out how to organize because we didn't have something so simple as Green Geeks, and our system works quite differently. Um, but we do have the ability to buy credits, buy carbon credits, as a lot of people are aware of. There was this credit, carbon tax and credits and all that sort of stuff. So I found, and I'm really happy with this. I found a company in Toronto that I work with, and they fund green projects, like environmentally friendly projects in Canada. So now I know because before it used to go through a company called, I think it was like Frog in the States, Bullfrog Power, right?
Mm.
And so I was funding power in the US, which is fine conceptually. Like I don't, as long as it's going to something that's going to benefit the world, I'm happy with that. But when it was available to me to choose something Canadian instead and fund Canadian businesses and Canadian projects, that really meant something for me. So we've got our American clients still funding the American system, American power, and we have our Canadian clients funding Canadian projects, which I love. So I used, and it's actually not as easy as I thought. I use a general carbon calculator to estimate the website usage of my websites, and I get some of that information from my my host provider. You can usually get it on your cPanel, or sometimes if you might need to get it from um, yeah, you might need to get it from support, and they should be able to tell you about how much power you use in a month based on the traffic that you get to your site and how big your site is. So that's generally how the carbon calculator works. And then I make sure that I'm offsetting that amount of power in credits. And and that's how I work it. So if you're interested in doing that, I can provide the company um, um, link. I can also provide a link to Green Geeks in the comments below. Or if you're interested in having WordPress maintenance done, both Phelan and I do that. So you can get us to do your hosting or your maintenance. I don't know if you guys do hosting at Seymour Digital.
We don't.
Oh, so you
General.
just do the maintenance on whatever
Yeah.
hosting they have.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's our
Yeah,
own
we do some of
our
that too.
own flow of it. I was
Yeah.
gonna say as well. The other thing to think about is what like the actual power generation itself also will matter. I know that that
Yes.
came up when
Yes.
we were talking
Yeah.
about this. So like a little funny anecdote is that that I relayed when we were doing the prep is that they joke that if you take Google Maps and you find any dam in Washington State, you will find like three white buildings next to it, and it's AWS, Google, and Microsoft, and
Yeah.
they just hook up directly to the dams, and so that's very generally green compared to burning fossil fuels, which is how Grok, the Twitter AI, is done. It's
Oh
in
yeah,
Memphis,
the
Tennessee, their
Twitter.
data
I'm
center.
I'm kind of done with Twitter. There's so many reasons to be done with Twitter, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, and even more so when you find out that the Grok AI is powered strictly through burning hydrocarbons like LNG, liquid natural gas
Yeah.
generators that
Yeah.
they keep on
Yeah.
wheels that they move around in order for them to get around regulations. So, like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of bottom of like how low it could get for your like being green. Whereas if you
Hmm.
are doing something with AWS, every so to my mind, what I've seen is each one, all four of the main, no, three out of the four AWS data centers are actually hydroelectric or nuclear powered. So they're
Hmm.
relatively non-carbon burning for doing that stuff. Google is also the same. To my understanding, is that they're all set up. One's in upstate New York. The like east
Right.
one is in upstate New York, and same for Google. They have one like right next to it, and that's all hydroelectric. That's powered by Quebec. Also, if you have
Yeah.
anything in your data center is in Ontario or Quebec, that's also going to be hydroelectric or nuclear powered. If you're in BC, you're also going to
Yeah.
be hydroelectric. I can't speak to the veracity of anyone on the Midwest, I don't think that it's very. I think it's a lot of hydrocarbons there, and also Atlantic Canada is also going to be a lot of hydrocarbons. They have a lot. They burn a lot of oil out there, um, and so that's just kind of just general power how it's coming to you. So that's also going to be one thing to kind of keep in mind where it's coming from. Um, yeah, because yeah, AWS has got the biggest data centers, and theirs are all hydroelectric, except for
Hmm.
U.S. East too, which is like down south, and that's bad. Anything southern United States, they're not good. Also, Facebook's AI is also has some very dubious. It's set up in Georgia, and it's also very dubious. So, try not to use anything Facebook AI. Not that Meta AI has been really good at all, as far as I could tell. Like
Yeah, I
they,
haven't really loved it either.
yeah,
And then speaking of AI, I think the funniest thing that I got up because I do run some of this stuff through AI just
yeah,
to double check to see if I've missed anything. The funniest thing, Phelan and I were laughing about this before we got on, is that AI was telling me how to use AI to get the information that you need to reduce your carbon footprint on your website, which is hilarious because AI uses an extremely large amount of power and water and is super problematic. It's like way worse than anything else.
yeah.
So, yeah, so watch the AI usage. I think, didn't you say that ChatGPT 5 had one of the reasons why it had sort of gotten a little bit worse than 4 version was because they were trying to reduce their power usage, or was that somebody else that mentioned that to me?
I've heard that that was like a big one. They were trying to pitch
Yeah,
the new models as like, oh, it consumes less electricity overall, but it actually didn't.
yeah.
It was just
Oh, I
a
see.
marketing talking point, as far as I could tell
I
from
see.
everything I've read. Um, yeah, the AI ones overall, they are, yeah, they use a lot of water. They use a lot of electricity. Um,
Hmm.
and so try not to use it if you can. The way so and also the AI ones are a bit. They're also no because what I just previously said about data centers, they're owned by specific companies. The AI people, as far as I know, are a bit more mercenary on where they get their compute power from, and so they will go to any source of a data center that they can get their hands on. They're not. They
Yeah,
don't actually because they're to justify their overhead costs. They're trying to not invest in infrastructure like Google has, where they actually have like a data center that's attached to this hydroelectric dam, and so or AWS, right? Because AWS has huge amounts of compute power, but they own the physical facilities.
hmm,
Whereas the data centers for AI are like I said, they're mercenary. They'll go wherever someone is has an NVIDIA graphics card running. They don't really
that's
care.
right. Yeah. And so the last thing I want to talk about is sort of personal workspace and digital habits other than like going out and playing in the world. Um, the other things you can do is unsubscribe from unnecessary emails. I mean, that really helps too. Delete unused files, photos, emails, or even just the duplicates. You know, sometimes you take 6 photos of one thing and then one works out really well and the rest you just keep. Get rid of those. And then stream consciously, so no more Netflix binges. That's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Use dark mode. This is one thing that I changed in my personal habits over the last 5 years or so, is moving to dark mode. It's actually um, there is some research that talks about how it's better for your brain and easier to focus if you're on dark mode. But it's also great for your power consumption because it takes a lot less power to show less light, you know, because really there's a lot less light when you're on dark mode. The background's all black. So that can actually be remarkably helpful, and you can put your device on, you know, energy saving um, settings, like save the battery. That will also reduce energy use overall.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of if you're listening to something and you're working away, turn the video off. Turn the video off. That's a
Yeah.
good one. So you can actually listen instead, um, or choose audiobooks instead of mindless TV when you're just want something to listen to in the background. And buy refurbished devices to extend their lifespan before upgrading. So those are all things that are pretty great to think about when you're.
Actually, you just triggered
Did I?
something that
Okay.
I did. I blanked on it that it makes absolutely a ton of sense. So I don't know if they are. They should still be around in Vancouver. If you ever get an opportunity, I volunteered with this organization called Ge- they're in East Van
Yeah,
up
no, they're
north.
gone.
They're gone. Okay, so
They're gone. I'm sorry. They were
they
called, what the heck? They were recyclers and they sold parts and things like that in down by Powell Street or that area.
yeah. They
They are gone, sadly. I'm looking for a replacement. If anyone knows of an organization that is like that, where you can donate your stuff, and then it was a social venture where they hired underemployed people, underskilled people, and taught them how to put together computers and gave them skills and jobs, and then they resold those items, which was
and
great.
Yeah,
So
because I
many ways.
remember volunteering for them. It was a lot of fun
Hmm.
of processing e-waste and a lot of it to actually do the manual labor of actually processing it down. I quite enjoyed their and everything they ran was like all open source. Like they were pretty well connected to
Yes.
the Mozilla Foundation as well. I think there
Yeah,
was a
they were
weird
great
connection.
people.
Um, I know that they probably were probably taken out with COVID. I'm going to guess would be
I can't remember. I think it was before COVID, actually. But I'm gonna look it up because I remember I was devastated when that.
yeah.
But I can't remember what they're called either.
Yeah, I'm trying to find any sort of just quickly googling now that I've yeah, but definitely anything you could do for e-waste, make sure it gets returned to an appropriate place because that stuff is way more toxic to the environment
Yeah.
than anything else. So anything you could do to make sure that that gets into an appropriate place where it gets converted over. Because they e-waste I know is one of those weird ones that actually does get processed down really
Yes.
well, and the reason is because it's so expensive to get these minerals anyway that it's actually worth it to the people that are producing new stuff to even strip it out of old stuff just to repurpose it because it's not as prohibitively expensive for them. So it's an interesting life
It
cycle
was
as
called
well.
Free Geek. It was called Free
Was it
Geek.
Freaky?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Uh,
called Free Geek, but it looks like there's another organization just doing a quick called Reboot Canada that operates in the Vancouver area, focusing on um, refurbishing computers and offering tech support to the community. So that might be an organization to look at too.
yeah, I was definitely going to look at that as well for just where I live on the island because I live in a pretty
Hmm.
central point between two major
Hmm.
cities that wouldn't be a bad idea. But apparently, I just did a quick Google, and apparently the return it people have really stepped up their game as well to kind of take it on.
Yes, that's where
And
I've been taking all of my stuff since
yeah,
recently.
I do as
But
well. That's
I would prefer if it was refurbished, but I think they just recycle once you bring it to return it.
yeah, but I think they stepped up their game with actually getting in touch with not
Oh,
refurbishers, but
really? Oh, great.
yeah. So the actually getting it
Oh, that's good news.
because again those rare earth minerals that go into that stuff is actually it's worth it for them to even pull apart old like computers to
Yeah,
kind of extract as
yeah,
much as they can. um,
that's right.
so and I think also Apple's done a better job, don't quote me on that, of taking in old computers and then having them get disassembled to be made into new computers. So at least
Well, they
like
have certainly been advertising a lot around that, so that's good.
yeah, as,
Um,
of course you
but
can't speak to the actual veracity of how good they are
mhm,
about it, but again I think
yeah,
it's actually even an economic standpoint that if you could extract that little bits of gold that you use for the stuff, I've heard that they have like nice CNC machines that do that and kind of
hmm,
can pick out different metals and do that kind of cool stuff.
yeah,
Again,
that's
can't speak
great.
to the veracity of that, but anyway, I think we are coming
We
up
are,
on
yeah, we
time.
are out of time, that's for sure. So thank you so much for joining us. If you want to join our community, we are in the Business Marketing Mixer group on Facebook. But we come live every Thursday at 11 a.m. And so you can join us wherever you found us, whichever platform you prefer. Next week, it is Pip and Phelan talking about what is new in Google Ads. So don't miss that next week.
Yep.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye for now.